What if I told you that the thing you're most afraid of chasing is the one thing that could set your soul on fire? When we hear the word passion, we often imagine something explosive, something bold and dramatic, lit up by spotlight and applause. We associate it with the people who seem to have it all figured out, who stride confidently down a path with certainty and charisma. But real passion, true passion, doesn't always look like that. In fact, most of the time, it doesn't. Sometimes passion is quiet. It lives in the small moments. It's the person who wakes up a little earlier just to write before work. It's the student doodling in the margins of their notebook, not because anyone asked them to, but because something inside them needs to. It's found in stolen hours, side projects, whispered dreams we barely speak aloud, even to ourselves. Passion can feel more like a soft pull than a shove. It's not always the thing you shout about at parties. It's not necessarily what's trending or profitable. It's the thing you do when no one's watching. The thing that brings a sense of peace, or flow, or focus. It's the kind of joy that doesn't scream. It hums steadily and persistently, even in the background of your everyday life. And sometimes passion hides beneath layers of doubt and fear, not because it's weak, but because it's sacred. We protect what matters most. We hesitate to share the deepest parts of ourselves because they feel too personal, too tender to risk judgment. That doesn't make the passion any less real. If anything, it makes it more meaningful, because it means it's coming from a place of authenticity, not performance. It's easy to dismiss something quiet, to believe that if it's not loud, if it's not seen or celebrated by others, then it isn't valid. But think about the most powerful forces in the world. Things like gravity, or time, or love. They're invisible. You don't always see them, but you feel them. They shape everything. In the same way, your passion doesn't have to be flashy to be powerful. It doesn't need an audience to be valuable. It doesn't need recognition to exist. Some of the most extraordinary things we create are born in silence, in solitude, in the places where we feel most ourselves. That quiet fire, that flicker inside you, is just as worthy, just as potent, as the loudest roar. Sometimes people won't even notice you're passionate, because it doesn't always look like fireworks. It looks like patience, like practice, like someone returning to the same craft over and over again, not out of obligation, but out of love. Passion doesn't always demand attention. It doesn't always need to announce itself. Often it lives within those who are still figuring it out, still afraid, still unsure, yet continue to show. We're taught to think of fear as the thing holding us back. We're told to be fearless, to conquer fear, to silence it like a weakness. But fear, in its purest form, is not our enemy. It's a natural, deeply human response to stepping beyond what we know. It's our body's way of saying, you're entering unknown territory, and that, if we're being honest, isn't always a bad thing. Fear shows up when we care about something. It appears when we're close to something meaningful, that edge of the cliff feeling before we try something new. That's fear, yes. But it's also evidence that we're growing, that we're risking, that we're reaching for something bigger than the life we've already mastered. Comfort, on the other hand, is quiet. It doesn't announce itself with a rush of adrenaline. It doesn't make your heart race or your palms sweat. Comfort is subtle, persuasive, and deceptively safe. It tells you to stay where you are, to stick with what you know, to avoid the unknown because the unknown might hurt. Comfort doesn't care if you grow. It only cares that you remain familiar, and that's why it's so dangerous. It's easy to romanticize comfort. After all, it's where we feel in control. It's where we know what's expected, where the outcomes are predictable, and where the stakes are low. We all need comfort sometimes, to rest, to recover, to feel safe. But when comfort becomes a habit rather than a pause, it becomes a trap. Comfort lulls you into routines that no longer inspire you. It convinces you that staying still is smarter than moving forward. It creates a version of life that feels fine on the outside, but quietly stifles you on the inside. It's the voice that says, You're not ready yet. It's the logic that tells you to wait a little longer, to perfect a little more, to shrink your dreams to fit the life you already know how to live. But fear, real fear, the kind that arises when you're about to step into your truth, is not a sign to stop. It's a signal to pay attention, because behind fear there is almost always something worth discovering. A lesson, a version of yourself you haven't met yet, a strength you didn't know you had. The discomfort that comes with fear is not the enemy, it's the passageway. It's the challenge that invites you to evolve, to build resilience, to break patterns that no longer serve you. We tend to imagine courage as the absence of fear, but it's not. Courage is being afraid and choosing to move anyway. Not because you're reckless, but because something inside you is stronger than the pull of staying the same. Because you realize that the cost of staying comfortable is often higher than the risk of change. Comfort wants you to believe that safety is the same as fulfillment, but they are not the same. Safety might protect you from pain, but it can also protect you from possibility. And while fear demands your attention, comfort demands your silence. It asks you to trade potential for predictability, to settle for what you know rather than stretch into what could be. There's a romantic idea of passion that gets sold to us. We see it in glossy montages and filtered posts. It looks effortless, graceful, impressive, as if once you discover your passion, everything aligns like clockwork, the timing, the talent, the recognition. We're made to believe that passion feels like clarity, that it's a straight line, well lit and easy to follow. But that version of passion, the clean, perfect one, is a myth. In real life, passion is messy. It's scattered notebooks and unfinished drafts. It's late nights questioning whether you're good enough. It's bursts of creativity followed by days, sometimes weeks, of doubt or silence. It doesn't unfold like a tidy narrative. It unravels, gets tangled, and often feels like starting over again and again. When you truly care about something, it's rarely a graceful process, because passion stirs up all the parts of you, the inspired parts, yes, but also the insecure parts. It forces you to confront your limits, to stretch, to learn, to fail, to risk not just your time, but your sense of self. And it doesn't always reward you immediately. Sometimes it doesn't reward you at all, at least not in ways the world counts. There will be moments when what you love frustrates you, when the thing you care most deeply about feels just out of reach, when you compare yourself to others who seem more certain, more skilled, more successful. There will be days when you wonder if it's worth it, this thing that takes so much out of you and gives back in intangible ways. But that's the nature of passion. It's not tidy, it's not always logical, it often defies explanation. It asks for your time, your attention, your energy, and sometimes your vulnerability. It doesn't offer guarantees. It offers growth, but not always in the way you expect. It will humble you before it lifts you. It will teach you discipline before it gives you results. And passion doesn't always look how you imagined it. Sometimes it changes shape. It evolves as you evolve. What started as one interest might shift into something entirely different. What lit you up 5 years ago might not be what lights you up now, and that doesn't make it any less valid. That's part of the messiness, too, allowing your passion to grow with you, not trying to force it into a version that once made sense but no longer fits. People rarely talk about the chaos that exists behind the scenes of meaningful work, the revisions, the failures, the lost motivation, the moments of silence when the thing you love doesn't speak back. But passion lives there too, in the resilience it takes to keep going, in the willingness to show up imperfectly, in the acceptance that loving something deeply won't always feel good, but it will always feel real. The truth is, when you care deeply about something, you'll fumble, you'll mess up, you'll feel lost, you'll pour your heart in and still feel like you're not getting it right, but that doesn't mean it's not worth it. That doesn't mean it's not working. That doesn't mean it's not your path. Passion isn't about perfection. It's about showing up for something even when it's hard, even when it's uncertain, even when it's wildly, beautifully, inconveniently messy. There's a quiet but profound transformation that happens when you begin to follow what truly matters to you. It might not be immediate, and it rarely announces itself with certainty or clarity, but slowly, with each choice to honor your curiosity, your creativity, your conviction, you start to build something deeper. You start to build purpose. Purpose doesn't arrive fully formed. It doesn't come with a title or a perfect 5-year plan. It's not always loud or visible to others. Often, it begins with the simple act of paying attention to what draws you in, to the things that make time disappear, that fill you up instead of drain you, that speak to something honest inside you. These small moments, repeated over time, become the foundation of a life that feels aligned. Passion is the seed, but purpose is what grows when you nurture it. And nurturing it doesn't always look like bold leaps or grand gestures. Sometimes it looks like persistence, like saying yes to the quiet call to try again, like protecting your energy so you can keep showing up for what you care about, even when the world doesn't applaud. The truth is, many people live without ever discovering what moves them, not because they don't have a purpose, but because they were never given the space to pursue what they loved long enough to uncover it. In a world that often values productivity over meaning and speed over depth, it's easy to lose touch with the deeper why behind what we do. Passion is what reconnects us to that why. It reminds us that we are not here just to meet expectations or check boxes. We are here to feel something, to build something, to give something real to the world. Purpose isn't always about a career or a cause. Sometimes it's about how you choose to live. It's the intentional way you move through the world, the care you bring into your relationships, the way you create meaning in the mundane. It can be quiet, even invisible to others, but to you it feels rooted, it feels real. And when your actions begin to align with your passion, even in the smallest ways, you start to feel that shift. Decisions become clearer, doubts become quieter. You find strength not because things get easier, but because they begin to feel more right. That internal alignment gives you a kind of direction that isn't dependent on anyone else's approval. It becomes a compass, and that compass becomes your purpose. Passion gives you energy. Purpose gives you direction. One feeds the other, and together, they create a sense of meaning that goes far beyond what you do. It becomes part of who you are. We often think of inspiration as something grand, something that comes from people who have already achieved extraordinary things, who stand on stages or fill history books, who have all the answers and seem untouchable in their confidence. But real inspiration doesn't always come from perfection or success. More often, it comes from courage, quiet, personal, everyday acts of bravery that speak to something deeply human in all of us. Being brave doesn't mean being fearless. It means acting even when you are afraid. It means showing up in moments of uncertainty, of discomfort, of vulnerability, not because it's easy, but because you've decided that something matters more than your fear. And when others witness that, when they see someone stepping into discomfort, taking risks, making mistakes, learning out loud, they see possibility for themselves. You may not realize it, but your courage makes room for others. When you try something new, when you speak your truth, when you admit that you're still figuring things out, you give silent permission to those around you to do the same. Your bravery creates ripples, not always in dramatic or visible ways, but in the quiet space where people are watching, listening, absorbing your energy, and thinking, maybe I can try too. It doesn't take a platform or a perfect story to be inspiring. It takes honesty. It takes showing the real parts of your journey, the doubts, the messiness, the unpolished efforts that are still full of intention. It's the bravery of the artist who shares unfinished work, the student who asks the question no one else dares to, the parent who admits they don't have all the answers, the dreamer who keeps going even when the path is uncertain. There is something magnetic about people who are brave enough to be seen, not just in their success, but in their striving. Because we live in a world that often tells us to hide our imperfections, to edit our stories until they're digestible, to only share when the outcome is impressive. But the most relatable, empowering moments come not from someone being perfect, but from someone being real. Bravery looks different for everyone. For some, it's standing up and speaking out. For others, it's staying soft in a hard world. Sometimes it's choosing rest over productivity. Sometimes it's pursuing a dream no one else understands. And sometimes it's just continuing, despite the setbacks, despite the silence, despite the fear. You don't have to try to inspire anyone. That's the beauty of it. When you live honestly and bravely, when you choose to be true to yourself in a world that constantly tells you who to be, you naturally become a light for others. Not because you're trying to lead them, but because your courage reminds them that they are allowed to lead themselves. From a very young age, we are conditioned to seek approval. We raise our hands to speak, wait for our turn, ask before we act. This isn't inherently wrong. It teaches us structure, discipline, respect. But somewhere along the way, we begin to internalize a dangerous belief that in order to pursue what we truly want, we must first be allowed. We wait for the right time, for someone to tell us we're ready, for a sign that it's okay to be who we really are, that it's safe to want more, that we're good enough to begin. But here's the truth that's hard to swallow and even harder to live by. No one can give you that permission. No mentor, no parent, no partner, no system. It has to come from you. This is not about arrogance or rebellion. It's about understanding that the most meaningful choices you will ever make are the ones that come from deep within, not from external validation. It's about realizing that your life is not a script someone else wrote. It's a blank page, and every time you hesitate, every time you wait for someone to tell you it's your turn, you hand the pen to someone else. We often idolize the concept of permission without realizing how subtly it holds us hostage. We tell ourselves, once I get the right degree, once I have more time, once I've earned the respect, once someone believes in me. But these are just socially acceptable delays, comfortable excuses we wrap around our fear of failure, of rejection, of standing out too soon or standing up alone. The truth is, we have been taught to underestimate our own voice. We downplay what we feel drawn to, as if we need proof that our dreams are valid, as if passion needs to be justified before it can be pursued, as if we need to collect stamps of approval before we're allowed to move forward. But life rarely hands us permission slips. The world doesn't pause to validate our inner callings. Most of the time, it's too distracted, too preoccupied, too busy enforcing its own noise. So we must learn to listen inward, to trust that inner voice. Not the one that doubts or hesitates, but the one that whispers, "This matters to me." That voice may be quiet at first. It may be buried under years of conditioning, but it's still there, waiting for us to notice, to acknowledge, to choose it over the noise of everything else. There's a kind of courage that comes from realizing you are allowed to want what you want, that it is not selfish to create space for your dreams, that you are not required to justify your joy or your curiosity, that it is okay, more than okay, to walk a different path even when no one understands it yet. This is not about ignoring responsibility. It's about recognizing that responsibility includes being true to yourself. You can still honor commitments, still be kind and grounded and thoughtful, and still take your own desires seriously. You can build a life that is both generous and authentic, but it starts by not waiting for someone else to tell you it's time.